Good morning. We're Clinton and Lauren McKeehan, and we're going to tell you a little bit of our God story, I guess you could say, and just how He really showed up and how He's blessed us in our lives.
The outside looking in, this is where grace begins. We were hungry, we were thirsty, with nothing left to give. Oh, the shape that we were in. And just when all hope seemed lost, love opened the door for us. He said, come to the table, come join the sinners who have been redeemed. Take your place beside the Savior.
Our story starts a few years before I met Lauren. My parents, my mom and dad have come to this church for a while. And when I was in high school and I was driving and had a vehicle, there was a lot of Sundays that I didn't want to come to church. But I was told that if I didn't come to church, then I wouldn't have a vehicle. So that, in my mind, made me come to church for all the wrong reasons. I came to church just so I could have a vehicle, so I could go do whatever I wanted, run around with my friends, party, and all that. I met Lauren when we were in high school, and then when Lauren was 19, and Lauren got pregnant.
We had Brandon in December of 2009. I was 19. Clinton was 21. Or 20. 22. That was a hard time for me. We weren't married.
Yeah.
I felt like everybody looked at me different. I didn't share it a lot. But I just felt like at that point that defined who I was. That God couldn't love me. I wasn't saved. And that there was no way He could ever do anything for Brandon that would carry on to him. So and I carried that around for a long time, for probably about 6 years, because it was 6 years later before I finally realized that I didn't have to live with that burden or that guilt. For all sin is equal. It says it in the Bible. It's just us as humans have categorized different sins as
being the worst.
Yeah,
being worse. And it's sin is sin.
Yeah. And so one day, I remember I was like, we were doing all these houses where we would go to houses and do Sunday night Bible study, I guess. And it was just, we were talking about different topics. And it just hit me then when I asked, how do you know if God has forgiven you? And I was told that the first step to know or to get to that point would be you have to accept Him. And I got to thinking, have I fully accepted Him as my Lord and Savior? We were at Joe and Audra's for a women's Christmas party, and Audra was she said she was struggling with what to talk about, that she's changed her mind several times. And that she was just going to talk about, I believe it was about how God just loves us for who we are. And in that moment, it hit me that I needed to take that next step. I got saved in December, and it was just the second I made that full commitment to serve Him, to honor Him, it hasn't ever crossed my mind again.
Well, going back to prior to Brandon being born in 2009, I was in the fire academy at Cisco Junior College, and I graduated in August of 2009. Brandon was born in December of 2009. Even though we weren't really active in the church, there was individuals within the church that I guess treated us as we didn't expect we would be treated. I was specifically told that God hadn't blessed me with a job in the fire service because I wasn't serving in the youth or in some capacity within the church, and so that that further pushed me out of this church and serving God more than I was, because I just I mean, just quite frankly, it pissed me off that somebody would tell me that instead of just loving on us and loving on me.
Throughout the rest of the pregnancy, he stopped coming.
And Brandon was having tubes put in his ears at Cook's from a from a ear, nose, and throat pediatric ear, nose, and throat doctor there. And man, this guy showed up. I had no clue who he was, and my mom said, "You got to meet this guy. He's probably going to be the new pastor of the church." And man, I was just like, "Ugh, I don't want to meet this guy. You know, he's going to be like all the other ones." Well, no, this guy wasn't. He was my age, and he generally had a heart and love for God, but love for people. And he used that to make friends with people, to get them into church. And it wasn't a trap, but man, I fell into it. I mean, and it started out as just a little friendship, and man, it just grew and grew. And one day we were riding around shooting hogs and stuff like we always do. And he said, "Why are y'all not married?" And I kind of told him the story of what I've already said. And he said, "Well, how can you have a chance to do right if nobody will give you a chance at all?" And that night I went home and I told Lauren, I was like, "We got to get married." I was like, "You got to pick out a day and we got to get married." But the Tuesday before we got married, so it would be like, I guess the 12th, November the 12th, we had to do a marriage counseling with Chris. And the first thing he asked is, "Are y'all saved?" And I was like, "Well, I think I am, you know." And he's like, "Well, if you're asking that question or saying something like that, then you're not saved."
And I lied and said,
"Yeah,
I was. I'll be honest."
She said she was, because Lauren was coming to the church throughout that whole time, through her pregnancy and then right after Brenton was born, and I wasn't. I was just, no, I wasn't going. And so I ended up getting saved that night, and it changed. I could see now looking back, I could see the change start. We moved into our first house at Trent, and just started living life. And I started, I was in church faithfully, honestly, faithfully. As long as I wasn't at work, I was coming to church. But not serving anywhere. Neither one of us were really serving anywhere, but we were just faithfully coming, faithful members of the church.
Which was a big step.
Yes.
For us, because for so long it was just me and Branton. So just to have Clinton there, that was a big step.
Yeah, we ended up, doing a baby dedication for Branton when he was 2, I guess, a year and a half or 2, I can't remember, and just making that commitment that's how we would raise our kids. And I made that commitment knowing that if I made him a promise, then that's a promise that I'm going to keep to myself, and I'm going to keep it to him, because I don't want to disappoint him or, lie to him, let him down. So that just furthered my drive, I guess you could say, to want to, be in church and continue to grow in faith and grow with God. We had it made. Brenton was basically self-sufficient, 4 years. But, hey, we got to have another kid. That's what we thought. And it was a boy. and man, he was a blessing that I think we needed, because Mav is completely opposite of Brandon. I mean, he is Moses. Well, y'all know him. He's crazy. I wish y'all could live with him for a little while. And the things that come out of his mouth and that he says and his facial expressions now are just, the kid's a clown, but I love him. I mean, he runs around, but he's recently got the nickname from me as Molasses, because when you're trying to get him to do something and you're on his butt about it, he's just slow as molasses. So I've started calling him Molasses Mav, and he thinks it's hilarious, but it's Mav. I mean,
it's just crazy how Brandon and Mav are totally opposites.
Yes. And Branton wants to worship by praying, and
Mav singing.
And Mav wants to sing. Mav's music guy. We'll be going down the road and he'll tell you, "Play this song." And you're like, "Whoa, Mav, why you And it's just, I guarantee you it's God. Hey, poke your dad in the heart with this one, boy. I mean,
and then Brandon prays, and you're just like,
yeah,
okay.
but it's amazing how those two have found a niche to serve and to speak with us with the way they serve is, for Brandon to pray. I know he's my son, but I mean it's amazing to hear a 10-year-old kid pray like that. But then Mav's just like a worship. He'll want you to play some songs. Sometimes it'll just cut you down. And
he knows every word.
Yeah, and he knows the words, and he sings good like his mom. And but it's amazing for God to bless you like that with two kids that are completely different, but at the same time, just exactly what your family needs and what you need. And then right after Chris left, I guess that was hard, but it was decision time for us, and that's when the church was looking at hiring a secretary, and Lauren had a good job at the time, but man, we were paying. Her whole paycheck was going to child care, so I mean, I told her, I was like, if you want it, try to get it, and that's what I mean. She can talk on that now, and how that, I guess, affected her and changed her.
It was good for us. We were able to, for so long, with his work and me working sometimes 10 hours a day, I felt like for a while we were distant. We weren't growing together. It was busy trying to chase two kids, because at this time we've had Mav. I applied and I got it, and one point somebody asked me, how are you the secretary with the past you've had? And that really hurt. It brought up it just brought it back, the pain that we've just have gone through, and John, it just says that your life's not going to be perfect. There's going to be trials, there's going to be tribulations, but it's just the way that you push through them. And so I told him, I said, well, I don't let my past define who I am today. We've come a long way. There's days that we struggle. I feel like everybody struggles. I failed as a mom, as a wife, but the one that we've learned, not failed, but just didn't do very good. But we've learned that not to just give up. My job, so since I've started working here, it's been great. I love doing what I do. I love the family connections that we're making. But it's grown who I am spiritually. When I started working here, I started getting really involved in the children's church and really kind of every little aspect. That's what we needed, I feel like.
When she took the job, it was a big risk for us financially, we thought, because she was going to make less money, but we were going to not have to pay for child care, because she was going to have the flexibility to pick the boys up from school, but also she would have the flexibility that she didn't have before, as if there was anything going on with the boys at school or if something happened, she was going to be able to break away and take care of that. And that was a big deal, especially if I was on duty at work. But part of the job requirement was that we had to be faithful to the church in all aspects, and we had to be faithful even in tithing. And when she first took the job, that was a struggle. I don't know, more so for me. I'm pretty, I wouldn't say just like money conscious, but I mean, this is how much money we have, and it's got to go to here. We got to make it till there. And she'd had the job for 6 weeks.
This job?
Yes. Something like that. And a previous elder of the church called us, and I guess he kind of watched over that. I guess that was part of his deal, is when she got the job. And he was like, hey, I noticed that, y'all haven't tithed faithfully all the time like you should, And he just said, it doesn't matter if it's 10% or 1%, but he said, if you do it faithfully with a good heart, he said, just watch and let God bless you. And so we started out, and I don't know, it was like 5 or 7%. and it was easy. I don't know. I mean, God just took care of us. It was easy, and then I don't know. I told Lauren, hey, this much more. Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, do it. And I don't know what we're doing now. I haven't paid attention to it. She does the online. I don't know how much she gives, but I can tell you that God will take care of you. I mean, you may barely squeak by one month, and the next month, I mean, it may be, man, holy cow, I got a lot of money, left over. But I can tell you that God will provide. God will take care of you. And you talk about people, if you hear people, I opened the mailbox and there was a check in there. Well, we experienced that just a couple weeks ago, an unexpected check. And I was just like, we weren't expecting it. It's right here before Christmas. And I was just, wow, I mean, it's one of those God things that only God can do. And it's just, some people look at it different, but I look at it as like God poking me saying, hey, looky here, see what I can do. And it just, to me, it gives me an urge to want to do more for him and give him more. And because it's amazing to see stuff like that work and how it can impact me. And I could only imagine how somebody that's never experienced anything like that, when it starts impacting their lives. Our story is so complex that we've gone through so much stuff that not necessarily has been just devastating and bad, but I mean, it's just teen pregnancy, people in the church just kind of like, almost pushing you away instead of just bringing you in and loving on you. Some marriage hardships, obviously not as hard as some, but still marriage hardships that would could break a marriage and tear a family apart. To where we are now, Lauren, secretary of the church, faithfully serving. Somehow, I'm a deacon now, and I mean, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, or told me 10 years ago, hey, you'd serve in the church and have the opportunity to be a deacon, I'd have just said, yeah, right. Because I know where I came from, and that's a lot of what holds me back, is because I grew up in this town and I grew up in this church, and it's hard for me to think, well, those people know what I used to be like. How would they ever, want to look towards, what I've got and say, well, how did that happen? Because I know how he used to be here. How does he have that? Because he used to be this way. Well, yeah, I did. But God can work in your life. You just got to let him. And it's definitely something. It's hard. It takes work. It's not easy. But it's amazing. There's a song, and Clint sang it a couple of times. I actually asked Clint to sing it one day, and it's Faithful. And by Eric Nieder, I think is his name. And the song just talks about, even when you're not, he's faithful. And I think that's just a summary of my life and my story. Because when I wasn't faithful to God, he was still faithful to me. He still showed favor to me. I mean, you hear preachers talk about walking that fence line of, living for God or not, and staying on that fence, and I did that. I walked the tightrope. But even when I wasn't faithful to him, he was still faithful to me. He still loved me. There was no place you could hide from him. He was coming after you, and he'll still love you. He always will love you. So that's all I got.
That's all I got.
That's all you got?
Yes.
Love you guys. Thank y'all.
But you're able, even when I'm not, you're faithful. Even when I'm not, you're faithful. Even when I'm not, you're faithful. Even when I'm not, you're faithful.
So Clinton said that that's the last time he'll do a video with somebody cutting onions right next to him. That's what he told me. That's what he told me. Man, this video, this is now, I don't even, I've lost count of how many times I've watched this video. And a few things that jumped out at me were one, how the years that Lauren carried around this feeling that not only could she not be used by God, but that her children somehow could not be used by God. And I believe that she's not the only one that's ever felt that way. And of course, going through teen pregnancy and not being married and all of that stuff that she carried around, this weight that she carried around. And then somebody coming back when she got the job and said, how are you going to serve with a past like you've got? And so that's what made me believe, or made me go back to reaffirm that God uses broken people to save broken people. But the enemy uses people too. The enemy uses people too, even when we're not aware of it. And I want you to understand that God has been in the business of saving people with broken people for a long time. For a long time. And just 3 examples is this. These are three examples just in the lineage of Jesus himself. All right? These are some of the people that God used to save everybody. To save everybody. If you go to Genesis 38, and I'm not going to stay there, I'm just telling you this is where you can find this story. Genesis 38, you'll find Judah. You'll find Judah, and you know, Jesus is known as the Lion of Judah because he came from the tribe of Judah. But what a lot of people don't think about, unless you've actually studied this story and this lineage, what you don't understand is that he came from Judah, but he came from Judah and Tamar. And if you don't know who Tamar was, Judah had 3 sons. His sons were named Onan, and Shelah. Shelah, I don't know why you name a boy Shelah, but he did. So Tamar married And then died because the word says that he was found to be wicked in the sight of the Lord. And he died. So then Judah told his son Onan, I need you to take Tamar, and so that your brother's line can continue, you need to take her into your tent. You need to make her your wife. And Onan, without going into a lot of detail, Onan did it. He took her into his tent, but he made certain that she never got pregnant. And so he ended up being what the word says, wicked in the sight of the Lord. And he also died. So then Judah says, hey, check this out. Just remain in mourning until my son Shelah gets of age, and then I'm going to give you to him. But what she didn't understand is that he had no intentions of ever giving Tamar to Shelah, because he was worried that I've lost 2. If I give her to Shelah, Shelah's probably going to die too. And so he never gave her. Well, Judah goes out of town one day. She finds out that he goes out of town. She goes to the gate of the town that he goes to, and she pretends to be a prostitute. She covers herself up and pretends to be a prostitute. Tamar does this. Long story short, Judah sleeps with her because his wife had just passed away. So he sleeps with her thinking that he's sleeping with a prostitute. She gets his signet, his cord, and his staff as payment. Then she goes back. When she shows up pregnant, they bring her before everybody and they say she's been immoral. She's now pregnant, and she comes out with the signet and the cord and the staff. And then she ultimately gives birth to twins. Now, you know, if that happened in Merkel, boy, she'd be the talk of the town, you know? But she is in the lineage of Jesus. Another one that's in the lineage of Jesus is Rahab, and you can find Rahab's story in Joshua chapter 2 and chapter 6. Rahab was also a prostitute. She was a prostitute in Jericho. And Joshua sends spies into Jericho before they surround the walls and the walls come down. He sends spies in, and they go in and stay at the house of the prostitute Rahab. She brings them in and she says, I know that your God is going to give you our city. And the only thing that I ask is that when you guys come in, will you save my household? And they tell her to tie a scarlet cord on the window that they sneak out of. And long story short, they save her household. Rahab is saved. Rahab goes on to marry a man named Solomon, and she ends up having a son named Boaz. Boaz is a very wealthy man in Bethlehem. Last week, remember when we talked about being okay, that you're not okay? Naomi's daughter-in-law, Ruth, that went back to Bethlehem with her, that ended up being Boaz's wife. So Rahab the prostitute ended up having a very wealthy son named Boaz, who ended up becoming the great-grandfather of King David. King David. And the lineage, the sons that David had, he had with Bathsheba. See, we remember about the baby that died, but what we never talk about is the fact that the other four, Solomon and Nathan and their brothers, they also came from Bathsheba. Because David took her in and married her. The woman that he stole from another man. So don't ever think for 1 second that God has not been in the business of saving people with broken people. If these people were to show up in our church and we knew their history or we knew their stories, would we look at them differently? Would we ask them, how are you going to serve with a past like that? God has been using broken people to save broken people for a long time. I don't care how broken of a past you have. Make no mistake about it. God is in the business of saving. And He will use you to save someone. He will save you and then use you to save someone else. And it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter how far you've run. It doesn't matter how unfaithful you've been. He remains faithful, like Clinton said. The reason that I'm so relationship driven is simply this, and Clinton touched on it. I really believe that one friendship can change the world. One friendship can absolutely change the world. And I believe that a friendship that Clinton had with Chris, as unlikely of a friendship as he may have thought it to be at the time, this relationship changed Clinton's world. And ultimately changed the world of his children and his home and this church. One friendship can change the world. That's why I'm more relationship driven than anything. That's why I always press so hard to actually be a family. Not just say that you're a family, but to actually be a family. To pray with each other, to love on each other, to visit each other, to do whatever it takes to have a relationship with each other. Because I really believe that one friendship can change the world. If you go to Acts 9, 26 and 27, you'll find the story of two guys, Paul and Barnabas. Everybody knows Paul. Paul was Saul. He was a persecutor of Christians. He goes to Damascus. He finds the Lord. And he goes out and he starts preaching, and picking up in Acts 9, 26 and 27, it says this: when he arrived, he being Paul, when he arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to associate with the disciples, but they were afraid of him, since they did not believe that he was a disciple. Barnabas, however, took him and brought him to the apostles and explained to them how Saul had seen the Lord on the road and that he had talked to him, and how in Damascus he had spoken boldly in the name of Jesus. So Paul, a guy that's madly in love with Jesus, a guy that has a past, he shows up, and all of the other church folk, they don't want to bring him in. They don't want to bring him in because they think that he's got to be faking it. There's no way in the world that this guy has become one of us. He had a past. But there was a guy named Barnabas. And Barnabas' name actually means son of encouragement. Barnabas' name actually means encouragement. Barnabas is famous for his patience with people. And if you look, I love this, man. Barnabas is the one that actually goes. Paul doesn't say anything. Barnabas goes in there and says, "Nah, you don't understand, man. This is this guy's story. And this is what he's done." And he talks up Paul. Barnabas does. And can I tell you, man, that we all need a Barnabas in our lives. We all, if we look back, we all have already had a Barnabas in our lives. Look, there's no way in the world that you have gotten anywhere in life without having a Barnabas in your life. Whether it's in school, whether it's in work, there's someone in your life that has believed in you even when no one else did, that encouraged you, that propelled you forward, that gave you the chance. We all need a Barnabas in our lives. And but we're always going to have those people in our lives that try to remind us of our past. We will. And that's why we got to stay focused on the Barnabases in our lives. But while you're picturing your Barnabas in your mind right now, I want you to ask yourself a question. Is anybody picturing you? Have you been anybody's Barnabas? Have you been a Barnabas for anybody? Have you been the one that goes out and puts your reputation on the line for somebody? Have you been the one that goes out and says, no, you got to listen. This guy is the real deal. I'm telling you people, you got to give him a chance. Have you been that for somebody? Have you been that for somebody? Or did you try to be that for somebody? You got burnt once and so you're not going to do it again. We can't forget, man, that one friendship can change the world and that God is in the business of using broken people to save broken people. So Paul and Barnabas, man, they become really good friends. But in Acts 15, 36 and 39, something happens. It says this: after some time had passed, Paul said to Barnabas, let's go back and visit the brothers in every town where we had preached the message of the Lord and see how they're doing. And Barnabas wanted to take along John Mark. But Paul didn't think it was appropriate to take along this man who had deserted them in Pamphylia. See, John Mark had actually left them. He had deserted them at one time and had not gone on to them to do the work. And there was such a sharp disagreement between Barnabas and Paul that they parted company. And Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed off to Cyprus. How many times have we been burnt? And so we're just not going to be the Barnabas for somebody. It seems like in this passage that Paul has completely forgotten about how Barnabas stood in the gap for him. See, we need to understand that even the best of us can get caught up sometimes. Even the best of us can get caught up in bringing up someone's past or holding someone accountable to something rather than forgiving someone of something. We're all capable of getting caught up. Barnabas was a great guy, man. Son of encouragement, right? We can all get caught up. In Galatians 2:11 and 16, this thing happens. It says this: but when Cephas, which is Peter, came to Antioch, I opposed him. This is Paul talking. I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. For he regularly ate with the Gentiles before certain men came from James. However, when they came, he withdrew and separated himself because he feared those from the circumcision party. Then the rest of the Jews joined his hypocrisy, so that even Barnabas was carried away by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that they were deviating from the truth of the gospel, I told Caiaphas in front of everyone, if you, who are a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you compel Gentiles to live like Jews? We who are Jews by birth and not Gentile sinners know that no one is justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. And we have believed in Christ Jesus so that we might be justified by faith in Christ and not by the works of the law, because by the works of the law no human would be justified. What's happened is this: Paul is preaching to the Gentile church, and Peter has joined in with some other guys that are saying that all of you Gentiles need to start being circumcised and follow the law. And he says that it's an hypocrisy that came in so hard that even Barnabas was caught up in it. I think that Paul actually says even Barnabas was caught up in it because everybody knew Barnabas's reputation for being so so encouraging and so forgiving of people. And Paul wanted to make sure that people understood that anybody can be caught up, that even the greatest of saints can get led astray if we're not careful, that we can forget about how God uses broken people, how we can forget our own past and start holding people accountable for theirs. Anybody is susceptible to this, and we have to be on guard against it. That one thing said 18 to 22-year-olds leave the church, and 32% of them say it's because of judgmental, from being the church becoming judgmental and being filled with hypocrisy. 32% say that. And 29% say that they just don't feel connected to their church anymore. Can I tell you that whenever we start judging people, we start running people off. When we start doing anything other than just loving up on people, we run people off. And I'm not saying that we excuse anything. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we just excuse stuff and just brush it over. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that we correct in love. That we don't try to force people into anything. We show people how we can get there. And we don't hide our past. We don't hide what we've been saved from, so that people understand that we speak from experience, that we know what it's like to carry around the guilt and the shame of a teenage pregnancy, so that we know what it's like to carry around the shame of a pornography addiction, or the shame that came with depression and suicide and all of these things. You fill in the blank. We talk about these things so that other people understand that we are a hospital for sinners and not a museum for saints. That's why we do that. The other thing that Paul made sure that he wanted to understand or make people understand is that when the truth of the gospel goes, when we start adding things to the truth of the gospel, when the gospel goes, then souls perish. When the truth goes, the gospel goes, and when the gospel goes, souls perish. Look, truth issues are all ultimately people issues. When we start compromising the truth, or when we start trying to add all these qualifications and these rules to something that is actually so simple and so pure in its nature, people perish. People perish. People leave. And they never find the real truth. We need each other. We need each other. If you really look at it, Barnabas saved Paul, right? Barnabas saved Paul when he stood in the gap for him. But Paul also came back and saved Barnabas and pulled him from his hypocrisy. The cause of Christ will always triumph, even through the weaknesses and the failures of His people. I don't want to overcomplicate anything. My vision for Calvary is this, that we understand that we might be just a completely jacked up group of people, but that Jesus Christ loves every single one of us. And we will storm the gates of hell with a water pistol if that's what it takes to save souls, because we believe in the gospel that much. I don't care what your past is. I don't care what kind of weight you're carrying around. Make no mistake about it, God is a God that saves. And God is faithful, even when we're not. Amen? Amen. We're gonna sing one last song. While we sing this song, I just want to leave this open for anybody that feels like they got something that they need to just lay down, that they need to just get rid of. Maybe you've been carrying around that judgmental spirit, and today is the day that you're done. Today is the day that you say, I'm going to be a Barnabas. I'm going to be somebody's son of encouragement. Amen. Father.